July 19th, 1961, 11:47 at night. William Jackson stood at the third-floor window of the boarding house on Lenox Avenue, his rifle barrel resting against the windowsill. Below him, the street was alive with Friday night Harlem. 40, maybe 50 people walking between the clubs and restaurants. Music spilling from open doors, laughter, the smell of fried chicken and cigarette smoke drifting up through the humid summer air. And directly across the street, Lenox Lounge glowed like a beacon, its neon sign reflecting red and blue across the wet pavement from an earlier rain. William had been in this exact position every Friday night for 8 years. Same window, same angle, same purpose, protecting Bumpy Johnson. They called him Eagle Eye because he never missed. 200 yards with iron sights, one shot, center mass. He'd proven it in the war, proven it in the streets. And for 8 years, every Friday when Bumpy left Lenox Lounge at midnight, Eagle Eye was watching from above, guardian angel with a Springfield rifle. Tonight would be different. Tonight Eagle Eye wasn't protecting Bumpy Johnson. Tonight he was being paid $120,000 to kill him. The approach had come 3 weeks ago. A man named Salvatore Greco, Vito Genovese's coordinator. Sal Set didn't make threats. He made offers. He'd found Eagle Eye at a bar in the Bronx, sat down like they were old friends, ordered 2 whiskeys, and slid a photograph across the table. The photo showed Eagle Eye's sister, Margaret, and her 3 children in front of their house in Philadelphia. Just a family photo. Innocent. Except Eagle Eye had never told anyone where Margaret lived. Sal smiled. Nice family. Be a shame if something happened. Then he slid an envelope across the table. $60,000. Half now, half after. The job was simple. Same position you're in every Friday. Same rifle. But instead of protecting Bumpy, you take the shot. 1 bullet. Walk away. Your sister stays safe. You get rich. And Vito Genovese gets what he wants. Eagle Eye should have said no. Should have told Bumpy immediately. Should have understood that the moment you take money from the other side, you're already dead. But $120,000. Margaret's mortgage paid off. Her kids' college fund. A clean life away from all of this. And it was just 1 shot. 1 man. A man Eagle Eye had watched for 8 years but never really known. Bumpy was a boss. Eagle Eye was an employee. Business. Nothing personal. He took the money. Spent 3 weeks planning. Tested the rifle. Confirmed the angle. Calculated the wind. Friday night, midnight. Bumpy always stopped on the sidewalk to light a cigar before getting into his car. 3 seconds of stillness. That was the window. Literally. Tonight, Eagle Eye had loaded 5 rounds into the Springfield. He only needed 1, but you always prepared for complications. At 11:45, he watched the street below. Bumpy's Cadillac was parked in front of Lenox Lounge, Illinois. Gordon, leaning against the hood, smoking a cigarette. The driver. The routine never changed. Midnight, Bumpy would emerge, stop, light his cigar, exchange a few words with Illinois, then get in the car. And in that moment, Eagle Eye would fire. Many details of this era were never officially recorded. If stories like this interest you, feel free to subscribe and stay with us. The door to Lenox Lounge opened. Bumpy Johnson stepped out, 54 years old, wearing a charcoal gray suit, his fedora angled just so. He moved slowly. No hurry, like a man who owned time itself. Illinois straightened up, dropped his cigarette, nodded respectfully. Bumpy reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a cigar. Eagle Eye settled the rifle stock against his shoulder, exhaled slowly, found Bumpy's head in the iron sights. 40 people on the street below, but none of them looking up, none of them knowing what was about to happen. Eagle Eye's finger moved to the trigger. 8 years of loyalty ending in 3 pounds of pressure. He pulled the trigger. Click. The sound of a firing pin striking an empty chamber. Eagle Eye's heart stopped. He pulled the bolt back, ejected nothing, looked into the magazine. Empty. All 5 rounds gone. He'd loaded them himself 2 hours ago. Checked them. Rechecked them. The rifle had been loaded. And now it was empty. Down on the street, Bumpy Johnson stopped moving. He didn't light his cigar. He didn't look startled or confused. He simply turned his head upward, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly at the 3rd floor window where Eagle Eye stood frozen in shadow. 40 people on the street, music playing, conversations happening, and Bumpy's eyes locked onto that one dark window like he'd known exactly where to look. Then Bumpy pointed at the window, one finger, direct, unmistakable, and his voice carried across the street, calm and clear, cutting through the noise. "Come down here, William. Now." Eagle Eye felt his bladder nearly release. Bumpy knew, not suspected, knew. Knew his name, knew he was in that window, knew everything. The rifle slipped from Eagle Eye's shaking hands, clattered against the windowsill. How? How could Bumpy know? The plan was perfect. The position was secure. Unless Bumpy had known for weeks. Eagle Eye's mind raced backward. 3 weeks ago, Sal Greco's approach. The money, the plan. Had someone told Bumpy? Had Sal been followed? Or had Bumpy simply understood, the way he always understood, that every man had a price, and eventually someone would offer it? Eagle Eye's legs moved without his permission. Down the stairs. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the railing. Every step felt like walking toward an execution. When he reached the street, the noise of Harlem seemed distant, muffled, like he was underwater. 40 people walking past, laughing, talking, living, none of them noticing the dead man walking. Bumpy Johnson stood exactly where he'd been, cigar still unlit, still in his hand. Illinois Gordon had moved away from the Cadillac, positioned himself where he could see both Bumpy and Eagle Eye. His hand was inside his jacket, not threatening, just ready. Eagle Eye walked across the street. Each step took forever. When he reached Bumpy, he stopped, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just stood there waiting for the bullet he knew was coming. Bumpy looked at him for a long moment. Not angry, not disappointed, just observing, the way you'd look at a broken tool you once relied on. Then Bumpy spoke, his voice quiet enough that only Eagle Eye and Illinois could hear. 8 years, William. Every Friday night, you sat in that window. I trusted you with my life. Literally, you had the perfect angle, the perfect shot. Every single week. If you'd wanted me dead, you could have done it, any time. Eagle Eye's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Bumpy continued. 10 days ago, I got word that Sal Greco approached you, made you an offer, showed you pictures of Margaret and her kids, gave you $60,000. He paused. You took it. Bumpy. Eagle Eye's voice cracked. I know why you took it. Family, money, fear. Doesn't matter. What matters is what I did next. Bumpy reached into his pocket, pulled out 5 rifle rounds, Springfield .30, 06. He held them up in the palm of his hand, like they were coins. 10 days ago, while you were buying train tickets to Philadelphia with Genovese's money, I walked into your room. I unloaded your rifle. I took these 5 bullets, and I left everything else exactly as it was. The street seemed to tilt. Eagle Eye grabbed a lamppost to steady himself. I could have killed you that night, Bumpy said. Could have had Illinois put you in the river, could have sent you back to Genovese in pieces as a message, but I didn't. You know why? Eagle Eye shook his head. Because I wanted you to pull that trigger. I wanted you to stand in that window, aim at my head, commit to the betrayal, and then hear nothing but a click. I wanted you to understand, in that exact moment, that I'd known for 10 days, that I'd been 3 moves ahead, that you never had a chance. Bumpy dropped the bullets. They hit the sidewalk with 5 small metallic sounds, rolled in different directions. Nobody on the street noticed. Nobody stopped. Harlem kept moving around them like they were ghosts. 8 years you protected me, William, and tonight you tried to kill me. But I knew. I've always known, every man who works for me, I watch. Not because I don't trust you, because trust without verification is stupidity. Bumpy finally lit his cigar, the flame from his lighter illuminating his face for just a moment. Now here's what happens next. You're going to walk away, leave Harlem tonight, take your sister and her kids, and go somewhere I'll never hear your name again. You don't get the second half of Genovese's money. You don't get forgiveness. You get life, which is more mercy than you showed me. Eagle Eye's voice finally came, broken and hoarse. What about Genovese? When I don't deliver, when you're still alive? Let me worry about Genovese. Bumpy took a long drag from his cigar, exhaled smoke into the humid night air. You just worry about living with yourself. Every night for the rest of your life, you're going to remember standing in that window. You're going to remember pulling that trigger. And you're going to remember that I knew, that I took those bullets 10 days before you even made your decision. That's your punishment, William. Not death, memory. Bumpy nodded to Illinois. Make sure he gets to Grand Central. Put him on the first train to Philadelphia. And William, he looked back at Eagle Eye one last time. If I ever see you again, if I ever hear you're back in New York, if Margaret ever mentions your name in a conversation someone overhears, there won't be a third conversation. Understand? Eagle Eye nodded. Couldn't speak. Illinois took him by the arm, not rough but firm, started walking him toward the Cadillac. As they moved away, Eagle Eye heard Bumpy call out one more thing. 8 years, William. I gave you 8 years of trust. You gave me 1 night of betrayal. Remember which one mattered more. The story of what happened that night spread through Harlem like smoke, through an open window. By Saturday morning, every number runner, every club owner, every street soldier knew that Eagle Eye Jackson had tried to shoot Bumpy Johnson and pulled the trigger on an empty rifle. By Saturday afternoon, the story reached the Italian crews in the Bronx and Brooklyn. By Sunday, Vito Genovese was having a very uncomfortable conversation with Sal Greco. You told me Jackson was reliable, Genovese said, his voice cold. He was, Sal insisted. We had leverage. His sister is alive. Jackson is alive. And Bumpy Johnson walked out of Lenox Lounge without a scratch. Genovese leaned back in his chair. Explain how that's possible. Sal couldn't explain it. Nobody could. The best they could piece together was that Bumpy had somehow known about the hit before it happened, had unloaded Jackson's rifle, and had let the whole thing play out just to make a point. That level of preparation, that level of control, it wasn't normal. It was surgical. Genovese made a decision that day that he would later frame as strategic, but was actually just practical. He sent word to his captains. No more attempts on Bumpy Johnson. No more recruitment of his men. No more operations in Harlem without explicit permission. The cost of trying to kill Bumpy Johnson had become higher than any potential profit. When one of his younger associates asked why, Genovese said something that became part of his own legend. Because Bumpy Johnson doesn't react, he prepares, and a man who prepares that well, who sees moves before you even think of them, that's not someone you fight. That's someone you respect from a distance. William Eagle Eye Jackson made it to Philadelphia that night, took his sister and her kids to Cleveland 3 days later, changed his name to William Morris, got a job as a machinist, never touched a rifle again. In 1964, he was found dead in his apartment, a bottle of sleeping pills on the nightstand. The coroner ruled it suicide. The note he left said only, "I can't stop hearing the click." Back in Harlem, the rifle rounds that Bumpy had dropped on the sidewalk became a different kind of legend. Someone collected them, put them in a small glass case, and hung them in Lenox Lounge behind the bar. No explanation, no plaque, just 5 bullets in a case. And everyone who saw them knew exactly what they meant. Bumpy Johnson had turned an assassination attempt into a lesson. He'd let a man pull the trigger, let him commit to murder, and then shown him that the decision had been made for him 10 days earlier. That kind of control, that kind of foresight, it sent a message more powerful than any violence could have. For the next 7 years, until Bumpy's death in 1968, nobody tried to shoot him from a window. Nobody tried to get close, because the story of Eagle Eye Jackson became the story everyone remembered. Not the story of how Bumpy Johnson survived an assassination, the story of how Bumpy Johnson knew about it, prepared for it, and let it happen just to prove a point. On Bumpy's last night alive, July 7th, 1968, when he collapsed from a heart attack in the same Lenox lounge, some people said they heard a sound like a rifle clicking empty. Just the imagination of old men remembering old stories. But the 5 bullets in the glass case behind the bar caught the light that night, and for just a moment, it seemed like Harlem itself was remembering. Remembering the night when loyalty cost $120,000 and mercy cost nothing at all. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications for future stories and let us know where you're watching from.